We're back, folks. I got my summer popsicle in hand. It's in the 90s, and we're doing a double review. A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2. So we'll start off with the first film. This movie came out in 2018. It's a movie based off of an original screenplay by a writing team of Scott Beck and Brian Woods. They developed the idea for this movie while they were in college, and they wrote a script for it in 2016. They originally had written the starring role for Emily Blunt, and they gave the script to John Krasinski to read, and he wanted to sign on to direct it. Emily Blunt did not originally want to play the starring role, but after reading the script while on a plane, she kind of liked the idea of parents being fearful all the time of how can they protect their children. And that's kind of one of the overlying plots that Krasinski talked about with Rolling Stone Peter Travers. It is a look at the fears of parenting and not being able to defend your family from any sort of danger. So that is kind of the underlying premise, shrouded in an alien invasion. Here you go. I can't hold this and do a review, so don't tell Mom that I gave you that. Shh. Anyway, so this movie has an hour and 30-minute runtime, directed by John Krasinski. Overall, the script stays mostly true to the vision of the original writers. Krasinski added some elements, such as the American Sign Language, not having an overpowering soundtrack at times, and just letting the silence kind of define the moment, because of these aliens are blind, and they were kind of inspired by bats using echolocation to move around and clicking sounds to communicate. The creatures were designed by Industrial Lights in Magic. There was a lot of different elements that they used to build up these creatures, which I'm not going to get into right away. It's irrelevant. You can go on Wikipedia. We're just going to give a brief overview because we're going to do double reviews here. So anyway, this movie was immensely successful when it came out in 2018. It had a $17 million budget, and it went on... Shh, guys, I'm trying to do a serious movie review here. Out and close the door. And it went on to gross... $341 million at the box office. And the movie was filmed on location in upstate New York in Dutchess and Ulster counties. So basically the premise is, in this post-apocalyptic world, this family, and Emily Blunt and John Krasinski are married in real life. There is an alien invasion, these creatures that basically go on a murderous rampage, killing everyone, and then this family realizes, as I'm sure many people did, that you need to remain quiet and they won't know you're there. So they walk on paths of sandbags that they poured all over the place to muffle their footsteps against any type of falling leaves or twigs that might have gone onto the path. And they live out in the country on a farm using American Sign Language because their daughter happens to be deaf. And the whole premise of the movie is them trying to find a way to defeat these creatures. So that's the movie in a nutshell. It's a great alien movie. In more recent alien films that have come out, it is one of the better alien films. The tagline is, if they can hear you, they can hunt you. ABC TV, a masterpiece that will scare for generations. I don't find this movie particularly terrifying. My kids watched it, and only one of them was really scared. Even my 5-year-old wasn't that scared. The aliens are very CGI, as you know, that's just kind of how it is nowadays. There's no more practical effects like Star Wars era. So overall, this is a great film. It's a fun movie. It's rewatchable. This is probably the second or third time I've watched it. Watched it alone in the theaters by myself, and then I watched it, I think, 2 times with the family because of the kids fixate on a movie and they want to watch it again and again. So, A Quiet Place, the original, I am going to go 4 out of 5. Very high score for Rotten Tomato average. 96% critic average. The critics loved this film. 25,000 audience members submitted their review to Rotten Tomatoes. They're a little bit lower, a lot lower actually. 83%. IMDb, very high score, 7.5 out of 10. And 2,300 Google users have submitted their average, and it is 4.2 out of 5. Again, When you see those high numbers of a box office total, $17 million budget versus a $341 million total, you know this movie was a success. So let's bring in the kids. Guys, you want to come in here and talk about this movie? Hello? Come on in. Let's hear your thoughts on part 1 before we talk about part 2.
Well, I think part 1 is a 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5? Only 2 out of 5? Really? Why don't you? What makes this movie only a 2 out of 5?
Well, because how many people die in it.
It's sad. So that makes it sad.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about part 2. Part 2 came out during the pandemic. It was released in New York City in May or March, I believe, like right at the very beginning of the pandemic before everything went crazy. So the movie officially released in 2020, but it was basically the original release in New York City. And then it would have a wider release in 2021 because of all the scamdemic lockdowns that kept it from releasing until a year later when people kind of started to come around. And even during the pandemic, this movie made $297 million. I think I was one of the only people in the theaters when I saw this movie in 2021. I played hooky from work and snuck in and saw this movie. I just snuck it in between appointments, and I told my second appointment that I was going to be late. So anyway, this movie had quadruple the budget of the original film, whereas this movie had a $17 million budget. Part 2 had a $55 to $61 million budget. Cillian Murphy is in this movie. A lot of the original cast is in there. And I like this movie a lot because it's a direct part 2 that picks off right where this film left off. But it also is a little bit of a prequel. So it starts when the alien invasion is first happening, so we can kind of see the lead in. And that's pretty much the only time we see John Krasinski in this film. So again, hour and 37-minute runtime. This movie's writing credit just goes straight to John Krasinski. They started developing this movie with Paramount quickly after they saw the success of the first film. Like I said, Cillian Murphy. It's a great story, very enjoyable. This is the second time in a week that you've watched it. So I like this movie quite a bit. Let's see what the critics have to say. Rotten Tomato average for this movie is a little bit lower than the first. It's a 91% average, but that's still quite high. Over 5,000 audience members have submitted their average, and theirs is a 92% average. IMDb, 7.2 out of 10. 4,900 people on Google. Their average is 4.3 out of 5. So again, you don't see a high box office total like that if it's a piece of junk movie. What do you rate this movie on your scale of rating?
Part 2, I would give a 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. And I did enjoy part 2 as well. I like Cillian Murphy. Obviously, he won the Oscar for Best Actor last year, or this year actually, for his performance in Oppenheimer. 4 out of 5. So I am double 4 out of 5s on these movies. They're fun movies. Are they the best sci-fi movies ever? Probably not. But they're rewatchable. I think they're classics of the time. And I recommend both of them to you. And we look forward to this prequel that's coming out in a couple of weeks on the 28th. That is a separate franchise. It's still within the world of this movie, but I believe it's completely new cast in a completely different setting. So until next time, thanks for watching, folks. I guess none of the other brothers wanted to talk about it, did they?
Mm-hmm. They didn't.
We'll see you next time.
Mm-hmm.